Introduction. The history of Vietnam. Vietnam has experienced a number of influences to its culture since becoming a nation. After being under the rule of China and later France, the food and cultures of these countries have been the main sources of influence in Vietnam. For example, Buddhism, brought over by the Chinese, is the state religion. I have a picture of a Tibetan Buddha here on the right. Likewise, the Vietnamese adopted the use of French baguettes into their cuisine, as seen with the popular sandwich banh mi. That is the banh mi sandwich there at the bottom. It's really, really good. I just had one tonight. Education and economy. In Vietnam, education is extremely important, and the schools are known for their intensive curriculum. Young Vietnamese students are encouraged to be competitive and attend prestigious schools. The success of their education system is evidenced by their literacy rate and overall economy. The country has a 97.5 literacy rate, and the economy is booming. According to a forecast listed by Goldman Sachs, Vietnam is on track to become the world's 21st largest economy by the year 2025. When discussing the food of Vietnam, an obvious geographical factor is that it is a coastal country. There is an abundance of fish, and because water is plentiful, their main agricultural method is in the use of wet fields that allow them to grow rice. Here I've put up a map of Vietnam. You can see that all along the east coast is just surrounded by water, so it makes perfect sense that their main source of fish and fresh vegetables and rice are their main diet sources. Health practices. As stated above, Vietnam has been greatly affected by China as well as its surrounding countries. Therefore, they adhere to the common Asian belief in yin-yang in regards to their foods and their health practices. The Vietnamese use a number of Eastern health practices, such as coining. Here on the left, a woman is coining another woman. This is done by lubricating skin or the coin and pressing it firmly onto the patient's skin. Another method is acupuncture, which involves placing acupuncture needles over strategic points. You can see this here on the right. Both of these methods are intended to relieve pressure and pain. Communication patterns. As with most Eastern countries, Vietnam is a high-context culture. This means that they are predominantly nonverbal in their communication patterns, value groups over individuals, and have a deep respect for traditions. Description of food habits. Common foods and flavor principles. Common foods in the Vietnamese culture include rice, fish, and vegetables. Their core food is long-grain white rice, while their secondary foods include fish, some beef and pork. It depends on how rich or poor a person is if they can eat a lot of beef and pork. Also potatoes, bananas, cashews, and sugarcane. In seasoning their foods, the Vietnamese rely on the 5 elements. This is a concept which means that all foods should have some elements of spicy, sour, bitter, salty, and sweet included in them. Some examples of these foods would be fish sauce, coconut milk, star anise, mint, lime juice, and lemongrass. Food preservation and cooking methods. The main methods of food preservation have been fermentation and drying, while the most common food methods of cooking are simmering and steaming. Family-style meals. When the Vietnamese serve their meals, they do so in what is known as family style. This involves serving all the dishes on the table or the floor at once and allowing all the guests to serve themselves. A typical meal usually includes soup, a main dish, a salad, and a variety of side dishes. Tea is commonly served before and after meals. On special holidays, such as the New Year, there would be a feast. At these feasts, they typically have shark fin soup and banana cake. Here's a picture of both of these foods. During meal times, the foods are usually served on the table close to the floor, and the guests sit on the mats on the floor to eat. This might be considered strange to Western cultures, but it's very common there, and it's just what comes naturally. Food habits are just as important to the Vietnamese in sickness as they are in health. In instances of illness, fasting is encouraged. As mentioned previously, the belief in yin-yang foods are important in Vietnam. Therefore, food treatments might include exclusions of hot or cold foods. Here I have a list of common cold, cool, warm, and hot foods. One example of treating someone with these kinds of foods includes the avoidance of cold foods for the mother 1 month after she gives birth to a new baby. Evaluation of food habits. Health problems and prevalent disease. As in most countries, the main determinant of what one eats will be the socioeconomic factors in any given situation. This is true for Vietnam as well. Vietnamese with low socioeconomic statuses will consume the least amount of protein. I mentioned that a bit earlier. These citizens probably won't have beef, pork, maybe a little bit of fish. According to the Center for Disease Control, this contributes to iron deficiency and anemia. There's also a lack of sanitation and clean drinking water in the poorest of areas, making diarrheal diseases common as well. On the other end of the spectrum, Vietnamese in a high socioeconomic bracket will have an abundance of food and access to high-fat, high-sugar fast foods as well. This seems to be contributing to an increase in diabetes. This is also seen in Vietnamese who come over to America. One Vietnamese woman that I interviewed said, because they have more access to unhealthy and fatty foods, some coming over for this first time will choose to eat these foods so that they can appear, quote unquote, more American. In evaluating the food habits in Vietnam, it seems that the majority of the habits are quite healthy, and I would encourage most of them. Here I have a picture of fresh vegetables, maybe some rice noodles, some shrimp, a bowl of soup with some steamed beef. These are all pretty healthy foods. A diet of fresh fish, vegetables, and rice would promote general health and provide important nutrients. Here's a woman selling her vegetables at a market. These markets are common in Vietnam, and most people would have, not most people, but some people would have access to these fresh vegetables. In addition to the types of food that they eat, it is important how they cook their food. Steaming and simmering are far more desirable than frying. So all of these things contribute to their overall health. One minor adjustment I may make would be to substitute brown rice for the long grain white rice. This may not be an option given that the Vietnamese grow the long grain white rice. I don't know if brown rice grows there, but if it does, I might recommend switching them. This has been my presentation on the food and culture of Vietnam. Thank you for watching.